video, we're going to be talking about Adobe After Effects scripting, how you can get into it, how I got into it. If you're interested, we'll talk about that at the end. I will share some resources that I use that I find really valuable in terms of finding what I need and building scripts, and I think that's about it. So let's jump right in. The first tool that I'd like to recommend is this UI script builder. So super easy, drag and drop. You can just drag in buttons and text, and you can make really complex UIs. You can make tabbed panels and all sorts of stuff. So this website is called scriptui.joonas.me. The next tool that I'd like to recommend is a code editor. So I use Visual Studio Code, and the reason why is because it has a whole library of extensions, and one extension that I use in particular is this Adobe Script Runner by RenderTom. So the Adobe Script Runner lets you use a really simple shortcut and just quickly test your code in After Effects or Illustrator. Like you can see in this example here, he's just typing in which program he wants to run it in, and then he gets this, his code is run, and he gets this pop-up in Photoshop or After Effects. So really useful tool for testing out your code. There's also other, if you look in the extensions, things like the ExtendScript debugger. I personally like this one, and I find it faster to use. Okay, now we're moving on to tutorials and where you can learn if you're interested. So if you Google search for Introduction to Adobe After Effects Scripting video course on aescripts, I actually have not watched this course. It was a bit pricey for me for when I was just getting started, and I wasn't sure if this was actually something that I liked, but I did watch the introduction script. So this takes you through writing your first script, and this was the first After Effects script that I wrote. The next great resource is NT Productions, and that's on YouTube. This guy, he does a bunch of tutorials pretty much covering almost everything that you could want to with Adobe After Effects scripting, and also he goes into Premiere and other things. But yeah, so mostly I think my technique for learning is to take 1 or 2 tutorials every week, and it'll be really uncomfortable, and then you keep doing it, and eventually it becomes more comfortable until it's just natural. There's no engineering gene that I'm aware of, and if there is, I certainly didn't have it when I got started. But yeah, the more you practice, the better you get, the more you feel like you actually are an engineer. So just, yeah, don't let yourself be discouraged if you don't catch on right away. If you enjoy it and you want to do more, then I think that's probably the main thing. It definitely takes a little bit of perseverance. So the next thing is the Adobe After Effects Scripting Guide. This one is not really my preferred method of learning. It's just a huge PDF with a bunch of references, but it's definitely useful. You can search in here. For this one, I would just Google search Adobe After Effects Scripting Guide. There's generally going to be one that you find in this PDF format, and then also one that you find that's just like more of a website version of this that Adobe hosts. But you can kind of click through here, and if you're looking for something specific, like working with folders in Adobe After Effects or working with compositions, then you can actually go in here and kind of get a quick demo on how you can work with that kind of object, whatever you're trying to interact with. So it's definitely a useful reference. Probably not where I would immediately start if I was learning. I think I would start with some videos and kind of use this as a supplemental resource. Another PDF that you can look up is the JavaScript scripting guide. Since Adobe ExtendScript is an old version, that's sort of a branched off version of JavaScript. So a lot of what you can find in JavaScript will be useful for Adobe ExtendScript. And that's mostly it. Another thing that I want to share with you is Creative Cow. So a lot of my Google searches include keywords like ExtendScript, because that's the language that we write After Effects scripts in. And I also will sometimes include the key phrase Creative Cow. So this is a great community. You can also post questions on here. People are pretty open to helping, but a lot of problems have been solved on Creative Cow. So you can start there if you are confused. And that's pretty much it. I sell on Adobe aescripts, and if you're interested, leave a comment below, and maybe I can talk more about how to get on marketplaces like this, or how much things, how you make, or how much money you make, things like that. So just let me know in the comments below if you're interested. I hope this was useful if you are an inspiring script developer. And again, I just want to reiterate, it's mostly about just consistency and passion more than it is about having like a natural gift for something. And yeah, and then the only other thing I want to talk about in this video is my story into scripting. And I started about 5 years or so ago. Before that, I had dabbled in CSS and HTML and a little bit of JavaScript, but it had been so little amount of experience, I really had forgotten almost everything by the time I started scripting again. But my first script was actually KeyFast right here, and I had this idea that I thought would save a lot of time, and I didn't see someone who had already built it. So I started learning, and I had a friend who was also learning ExtendScript, so he was a little bit ahead of me, and that was extremely helpful to sort of have someone that could, almost like a mentor role, and just finding someone who actually has done this before and who's good at this will just get you over these things that will be very confusing for you, and they already have done it. They can tell you in a second. So highly recommend reaching out to someone who's done this before. So I had this idea for what is now KeyFast, and I started building it. Eventually I sort of lost the motivation, and it kind of fizzled. So I knew that I wanted to keep learning, and it was hard for me to learn coding. I'd sort of lost motivation several times in the process of wanting to learn coding over the years. So what I did is I attached it to something that I was passionate about, which is I decided to donate the profits for KeyFast for things like supporting refugees and a few other nonprofit causes. And so that way I knew that every night that I did not release my code, that could have been potential money that someone could have used to make their life better. So that was sort of the motivation kicker for me to really get it across the finish line, and I got it done a lot faster. I mostly worked, I had a full-time day job, so I would just kind of go home and spend a few hours on it most nights, and a lot of the time I would get really carried away with it and then work really late and be a little tired the next day. But that was mostly because I got super into it and was just working late. So yeah, once I had like a basic prototype, I hopped over to aescripts and I asked them if they would be interested in taking it, which they were, and I was extremely excited. It felt like a college acceptance letter or something like that, because I had been buying aescripts and looking out for scripts on here, so it felt really cool to have a tool that was going to be released on here. So yeah, that process was a little confusing for me, but having a little bit of help from someone who was just a bit more experienced than me definitely helped me cross the finish line and get this tool launched. And yeah, it was a really good experience. It was pretty well received from my perspective. It surpassed my goal. I had a specific sales goal in mind, and it eventually passed that goal after a year or two of selling. And yeah, I've been really happy with it, and I continue to make scripts mostly for fun, as like side passive income. So that's pretty much it that we're going to cover in this video. I hope that you enjoy your potential journey into After Effects scripting. I'll just say that at this point, several years in, I'm having a lot more fun with it than I was on day one, I think. It's become a lot more fluent for me, and yeah, I'm really glad that I did it. And yeah, but I did have some level of enjoyment in the process, so it wasn't just complete pain. So if it's complete pain for you always, maybe it's just not what you're passionate about. But if it's difficult and you're just not sure that you can do it, but you do enjoy it, then please keep at it. It'll definitely be worth it. All right, see you guys in the next one.